must go. Who could imagine I'd be wandering so far from the home I love?
A Mahasiddha in Mahayana Buddhism is an ideal person who has managed to attain a certain level of realization. And that realization is a product of not just practice, but also study and contemplation, things of that kind. So a Mahasiddha, in short, would be somebody who is rather unconventional, quite provocative as an individual, manifesting certain behavioral characteristics that people might find rather unusual. But that's not what makes the Mahasiddha a Mahasiddha. Mahasiddha is a Mahasiddha because of not only that the Mahasiddha behaves in such and such a manner, but the Mahasiddha's way of behaving comes from that state of being which is unbounded, non-constricted, a total state of freedom. Really, that's what we would say in Mahayana Buddhism. In other words, that state of being goes beyond our karmic causal mechanism. In Buddhist way of thinking, we operate from many different layers of being. So on the surface, we are subjected to causal mechanism. So what we think, what we believe, and so forth, result in certain behaviors that either bring positive or negative results. But if you go deeper and you reach that level where you're unbounded, then you may still behave, but that behavior does not come from that state of being boundedness. It's not karmically motivated. It's not the karmic impulse. It's not behind what one is doing or thinking, or even in terms of interacting with people, it does not come from that particular level of being. So Mahasiddha is such an individual that can be in that unbounded state. Mahasiddha, may be somebody who can be in that state all the time, in which case that particular individual would be either like a Buddha or very close to it, close to the Buddha, being a Buddha. But there may be a Mahasiddha who is occasionally, who is able to sort of occasionally go into that mode. But in other contexts may not be. So there's that possibility as well. And I think people should recognize that and not think just because somebody or other is a Mahasiddha, then that individual has to be totally flawless, has to have impeccable character and behavior and personality and so on and so forth. All the things that we want to project onto a saintly kind of figure, which in many instances may not be there anyway, from what we can gather in reading their life stories and so forth. But the Mahasiddha behavior is based on what we were discussing before in terms of crazy wisdom. So I think Mahasiddha basically embodies two qualities. One is fearlessness, and the other one is, of course, insight. So Mahasiddha is not afraid to do things that is going to be challenging, that is going to be upsetting to people, that's going to be disturbing to some. But on the other hand, doing it not out of psychotic, sort of suffering from a psychotic episode or something like that, but in order to really sort of demonstrate what people are capable of achieving. So what some people might think of as humiliation, let's say, may not actually be an incidence of humiliating somebody, but that humiliation actually is a way of giving some kind of empowerment to the individual, saying you don't have to feel comfortable in your own little world and your own self-perception and thinking of yourself as being this person or that person and building a whole world around that. But drop that and you can be much more. So why don't you just then get out of it? So often, gentle words and sort of comforting comments and praises and whatnot may not work for some people. So they might actually need to be jolted out of their, preconceived ideas and notions and so on and so forth. So it may be about complete self-loathing or total sort of obsession with one's own self-aggrandizement, things like that. So I think that's what Trungpa Rinpoche wanted to show, how to break through that, because after all, those two sides are the two sides of the same coin, so to speak. Somebody totally conceited also has a lot of questions, self-doubts underlying that. And then people with self-doubts that's become manifest has underlying self-conceit. Like it's always about me, and not thinking about anybody else. It's always my problem. It's always my suffering, my misery, that kind of thing. And I think the Siddha is trying to sort of teach people how to, sort of get over that.
I'd be wandering so far from the home I love. Who could see that a man would come who would change the shape of my dreams? Helpless now, I stand with him.